Will silver ever correct to historical gold ratios? I don't know what that is. 50 to 1, 15 to 1. This is what 15 to 1 would look like. And this is what some people are suggesting the GSR will revert to. So is that going to happen? There's two answers here. The logical answer is no. The popular answer is anything's possible. So I started buying silver in 2008. Really kind of enjoyed it. Physical stuff was interesting to me for a few reasons, but it wasn't about quick profits. I didn't even think of it as a growth asset really until 2011. Price really started to shoot up, and that was a lot of fun. I clearly remember thinking just how much my silver was worth all of a sudden. I remember going into the local shop to buy more, and each time I'd go in, the price was noticeably higher. I didn't really like that part. But when a single silver eagle hit $35, I tapped out. I figured that I was maybe too late at that point. Now, this was a different time. The premiums on silver eagles were about 20% max. So it's not like today when $35 eagles would feel like a holiday sale. So we have the benefit of hindsight today. We all know what happened in 2011. Silver climbed to $49.50. That was a gain of 175% in that year alone. It took gold another 4 months to start its run, to take off after silver went crazy. So the gold to silver ratio was momentarily 32 to 1. We also know that it didn't stick around. By late 2013, silver was back below $20 an ounce, and we haven't seen a gold to silver ratio anywhere near that tight anytime since. Today, it stands around 88 to 1. Now, on the other side of things, we've seen that ratio get as high as 114 to 1. That happened in 2020, and if you could get both gold and silver for spot, you made that trade from gold to silver, then you waited a while, traded back again, you would have an extra 25 ounces of silver, more than you would have had you just bought it directly. And that's the dream, or at least half the dream if your final goal is to end up in gold. Now, the problem that I've mentioned here a few times is that none of us are able to broker a trade that avoids premiums. Local dealer will almost always handle a trade as two transactions. You'll have a purchase and a sale. They will give you very little premium for their purchase, and they'll charge you going rate for the sale. Kind of takes the fun out of it. Now, if the dealer gives you spot for the gold, they charge you 20% for the silver, you get 95 ounces of silver for that 1 ounce of gold. That's rather than 115 like we were just talking about. And if you traded back at a ratio of 88 to 1, which is where we're at today, you'd get spot for your silver, you'd pay 5% for the gold, so it would take 92, maybe 93 ounces of silver to trade back. So if we're keeping track of that math, we've only gained 2 ounces of silver rather than the 25 ounces we were just hoping for. So that's the basic rub. To make a successful gold to silver trade, you're going to have to do better than that. You need to find silver for much lower premium, and you need to watch that ratio very closely. You need to be quick if it happens. That gold to silver ratio of 114 to 1, that has only happened one time since 1915, and it did not last long. The 32 to 1, that didn't last long either. So these aren't recurring themes. They're extremely unlikely events that none of us expected. So these numbers that I've been looking at, we're looking at historical performance here. I see people suggesting silver is the better buy than gold because it's the more undervalued of the two. Now, if we stopped right there, I would probably agree. Hard stop. I think silver is undervalued. It hasn't made much sense to me for the past 10 years or so. I just don't get why we're still battling $20 with silver price. We hear over and over how important it is for industrial use, but the price that we see just doesn't represent a high demand commodity. We see people suggest a lot, at least a lot in these comments in this small space, that they can buy silver at a high ratio like 88 to 1, and then they can trade it once silver corrects to historical levels. And I've seen those same people suggest that historical levels are 15 to 1 or 16 to 1. And to get there, you have to go way back to fixed ratio times. In 1834, the United States fixed the ratio at 16 to 1. That meant 16 ounces of silver would get you 1 ounce of gold. It was later changed to 15 to 1. So if you're new to this whole thing and you're influenced by what you hear here and what you see in the comments, well, that ratio, it's long gone. That way of life, long gone. The gold standard has been gone for 90 years. Fixed prices on gold and silver have been gone for 45. So if we're looking for historical guidance, we can't go back very far. We can really only go back 40 years or so. There were just too many factors that simply don't exist today. Now, if we do watch historical trends, well, the gold to silver ratio has been trending higher, not lower. So if you buy silver in the hopes that the ratio is going lower, well, you're fighting a pretty clear trend, starting with its move from that fixed 16 to 1. Fast forward to the 90s, it was around 50 to 1. You go into the 2000s, 60 to 1. And we've been trending up past 80 to 1 since 2013. So what kind of event could get it to retrace to 50 to 1 like we were seeing 30 years ago, or 15 to 1 that we were seeing a century ago? Hard to say. But if it did happen, and we're just going to ignore the 15 to 1, that's just silly. Look in the 50s. If it did happen and you were buying silver today instead of gold with the hope of later trading it, and we did see that ratio shrink from 88 to 1 to say 58 to 1, that would net you an extra 30 ounces of silver if there was no such thing as premiums. But there are, so a 20% premium on silver would knock down 30 to 18. It cuts out 40% of the profit. Still pretty good if you can get it. The question again though is, will this ever happen? And I don't like to answer questions with questions, but my question here would be, why? Why would it? What would cause silver to rise on its own while gold didn't? Is it industrial use? Have we seen silver's price rise over the past 10 years based on new industrial uses? Not really. Now, silver really doesn't have to climb that far to get to 58 to 1. With gold at 18.20, silver would only have to be a bit over $31 to make that ratio 58 to 1. But getting gold to stay where it's at would be the trick. Now, my conclusion here is that if we're going to reference historical trends for the gold to silver ratio, it's widening, it's not closing. We talk about metals being a long-term hold, and the long-term trend on that ratio is pretty clear. It's only human spin that tells us that history would tell us anything other than that. And it's interesting to me that if you were to Google gold to silver ratio, a lot of the articles written about this idea that the ratio is historically high and that it could reverse course, they've been written by gold and silver dealers. Why would a dealer want you thinking about this GSR trade idea? Well, that one's pretty easy. Bullion dealers charge considerably higher premiums on silver than they do on gold. And if I was a dealer, I'd want to push the one with considerably higher profit margins too. Now, if you're looking purely at silver being undervalued, you might be onto something. I couldn't say. I do think it's strange that silver has never really sustained a meaningful run on price. That's one variable. Maybe it's due for a win. But when you overlay the idea that it's undervalued compared to gold, then you have two uncontrollable, unpredictable variables in play. Silver has to go up while gold stays put, or gold has to go down while silver stays put. It has to go right in both cases at the same time. Now, if you think predicting the price of gold and silver is tough, well, predicting the price of gold relative to silver is twice as hard. So if it wasn't clear there, I don't think playing the gold to silver ratio is a good strategy. It's not really a strategy at all. It's making a two-part bet, paying a premium to make it, and then hoping you hit. That's my take on it anyway. I do feel silver is undervalued, but I've felt that way for a decade. We've definitely been hearing about it that whole time, and I wouldn't bet that silver will surge while gold stays still. Now, if you already have silver and you're waiting to trade it to gold, I think that that's different. I've traded off most of my silver. Some went to gold, so technically that would have been a GSR trade. Some went to crypto. I did fine with it. Now, if you're not worried about the premium that you've already sunk into silver, or you just got a fantastic deal on it, you're in a pretty good place. Just watch the ratio. It does fluctuate. There's no doubt of that. Now, my advice would simply be to not come into silver for the purpose of flipping it to gold. That's just a tough game. The only people giving the advice to do that, to buy silver to play the ratio game, are either selling silver or maybe they already have a lot of it already. Maybe they're just trying to convince themselves it's a good idea. As always though, it's just my take. Yours might be different. So let us know what you think. Hit us up in the comments. And while you're there, hit the like button. Be sure you're subscribed for more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.